think a couple things in broadest terms. One is that when you're talking to Johnny and Mary and Johnny and Mary's parents, getting them started, the questions you have to ask is, are you thinking about accommodating John and Mary, or are you thinking about John and Mary? If you're new in the field, not sure what you're doing, go to the people, listen to them. Go to the students, listen to them, and they will tell you everything you need to know about themselves and their needs if you interview them skillfully and talk with them personally. And that's a starting point.
Yeah, picking up on that a little bit, I think students with disabilities are students first and are more like everybody else than they are different from everybody else. There's a couple of extra wrinkles here and there in terms of accommodations occasionally, but really, whatever your office is, if you're in student life and you're in residence life, or you're in student activities, or wherever you are, the first point is to treat the student and listen to the student like you would everybody else. And then if you need assistance, if you're in general student life and you want to contact the Access folks or the disability resource folks, or however they're framed on your campus, have those collaborative connections in place so that you can get the little bits of technical expertise. And most of those are things that after a while you won't need much assistance on, and you'll understand, because very little of it is rocket science. Well, there's a lot of evolution to the field, and I think we're doing this interview from a national conference that is always energizing, but always localizing hot topics based on what's current now. And you're viewing this information at some point in the future. And so I would say, I think the issue of understanding the balance between integrating access into everything we do in a very integrative model that might be what we hope to achieve in many, many ways with national origin, with race, with gender, with other groups of individuals who have to overcome past history and deal with inequities in the world, and balancing that with there are places where equitable and equal are not the same thing. That we do need, what we're shooting for is really equity, not identical treatment of everybody. And I think that applies, personally I think that applies to national origin and everything else as well, but there's a fine balance between not going so far over into trying to treat everybody as identical that you wind up, anything extreme, you wind up doing something similar.
Indeed, and as we sit here in 2010, the regulations still aren't out yet for the Americans with Disabilities Amendments Act. But we know broadly that the Act is going to place less emphasis on who is and who is not, and who is worthy and who is not worth accommodations, and more emphasis on process of getting accommodations to happen for equality of opportunity. We really want to drop this old hot topic of who is and who isn't, and a number of other things that are going to go with that. But as we sit here, the Amendments Act is probably hotter than people know right now. Going to heat up a little bit more.
It will, I suspect, as regulations come out and as it gets vetted by the courts. We'll look at this period of time as being very active and very hot. I think one of the things I would point out and say, and maybe this is, I think, understanding the balance of social and legal obligations may be the eternal hot topic in at least disability and other affirmative equal access kinds of issues across the board. And I think one of the things that we'll discover in looking at that balance as a hot topic is that that the amendments have pushed that, But the law is a floor and not a ceiling, and that's true across the board. And if we stop focusing on as much on who's eligible under the law, at what point is it a disability, and at what point is it just human variation and not a disability, which is why the amendments were passed, then what we're focusing on is what is your need and how can we meet it. I'm not sure that that's a foreign mantra to anybody who's going to be watching this piece of video. I don't know anybody who went into student affairs because they disliked students and didn't want to meet needs. I don't want to scare off new professionals, but I don't believe you did it for the big salaries and fringe benefits. It's a wonderful environment to work in, and that's why we do it, and the people we work with and for are wonderful, but we didn't exactly go in it for the big bucks. And so I think that model of how do we understand what your unique needs are and how do we balance meeting those needs with making sure we achieve the goals of our programs and reasonable flow through the system, so to speak, is a balance that at some level we're always striving to do for any student. And so there's just a few extra thoughts here and there for the student with a disability, but I think there's a model there that we can blend with the standard student development approach to moving students through the co-curriculum.